Hello and welcome to the demo video for the quote calculator and report spreadsheet. So that sounds very complicated for a very simple thing. Let me first show you. I'm going to come back to the intro and setup because there's certain settings here that you need to do before you use the spreadsheet, but they're not really going to make any sense. So let me give you a very quick run through of what the spreadsheet does, and then I'll come back to the intro and setup and then walk you through the rest of the spreadsheet in more detail. So essentially what you've got is you've got a list of all your different quotes that you send out. Each one, obviously you've got a few items of information that you need, like quote number, date, customer name, so on and so forth. But then you've got up to 10 different items that you can add onto the quote. So now these are either if you're going to literally list items. So in other words, if you've got one price list and each item can appear on the price list up to 10 times, then that's one way of doing it. The other way is actually to list 10 different price lists. So each price list can only be selected once. So your first item has to come from price list 1, your second item has to come from price list 2, third from price list 3, so on and so forth. The reason for that is that was the whole reason why I made the spreadsheet in the first place. I got a few inquiries from people saying they wanted something very simple, where other people were quoting for them, so they had to select one of the categories from item 1, one of the categories from item 2, and so on and so forth. So you can choose how you set this up because it can work for both of those scenarios, and I'll show you how to do that setup, and I'll show you which one I've done. But I just wanted to show you first and foremost how it works. So really what you're doing is each item you're putting in a quantity and then selecting from a drop-down list the items in that particular price list, and you do that 10 times. You can then add extra items on if there are. You can put in a discount if there is such a thing. And then you can assign that quote to source. So where did that work come from? You can also set where those sources of work are, what they are, and I'll show you all of that. We'll get to that in a minute. But that's how you fill it in, each quote per line. And essentially that's working from these price lists. Now you can see that, as I said, we've got up to 10 price lists. These are all grayed out. The reason why it's grayed out is because of my selection. So you would either select to have only one price list, in which case each of these 10 columns here you can select from the same price list, or you'll have 10 different price lists. So this one fuels your first selection, your second selection is fueled by the second price list, and so on and so forth. Those are your two options. What that does is when you put the quote in, it generates a quote for each line, so you can see what the quote looks like, and it puts all this information onto reporting. So let's go back to the intro and setup. Now it will hopefully make a little bit more sense if you've understood that first part. And this is this first selection over here. There's a selection, you've got a choice of 2. It says please read this first. I very seldom put something on a spreadsheet that needs to be done beforehand and never ever touched again, but this is one of those things. I would suggest making this decision beforehand, selecting which price list template you want to go with, and sticking to it. And I'll show you why you need to stick to it in a minute. So what I've done is I've selected first price list 10 times, which means I only have to enter one price list, that's goods or services that I'm providing along with the price, and I've only got one price list. So I can select up to 10 lines on the quote, and each of those 10 lines will come from that first price list. The alternative is to select 10 individual price lists, which means if I were to select that, your 10 individual price lists, what that would mean if I go to the price list, you can see they're all open now. So I would now enter 10 different price lists. Yes, I can have the same products overlapping if I want to, but essentially 10 different price lists, so that each time when you select, you can select from the different price list. Because some people might have like a package type here and a different package type there, and and different things that they're selling, and you don't want to be able to select that, and that. You want to be able to select one from here, one from there, one from there, one from there, so on. Then select 10 individual price lists. But for now, I've gone with the first price list 10 times, and you can see all the numbers are calculating. If I were to change halfway through, this is the danger of it, to 10 individual price lists, you can see a lot of those aren't calculating because it can't find this information because it says there's nothing on those price lists. So that's why I say don't change it midway through, because you're going to have to come and readjust all of these prices. So let's go back to what I had. First 10 prices 10 times. What else do we put in? The default office location. Now, this isn't necessarily the office location, but where you're starting from. if you want to put in a price, if you want to work out on your quote a quote for distance, some people are obviously traveling quite far for different quotes, so you want to add in a fee for actually traveling that distance, whatever it might be, you can add that in. So the default office location, BR3, that would be in Beckenham. Put in the first half of the postcode essentially. It will work out where you are. Now, what the spreadsheet does is it's not linked to the internet. So what it does is I've got in the longitude and latitude locations of all the different postcodes in the UK, the first half at least of the postcode, and it works out as the crow flies how far between those two. So here's what you need to do. You can put in a percentage added. I put 5% for now. You can put in whatever you want. You can do a few calculations to locations. See what the percentage you need to add to get the right percentage. The percentage added is really just a percentage because obviously you're not going to drive as the crow flies in a straight line. You're going to be driving following the roads. So you want to put in a certain percentage to add on to compensate for all the windiness of the roads rather than just traveling in a straight line. The other thing you want to do is the miles difference, is put how many miles, because this thing will calculate to the middle of BR3, whichever postcode you put into the middle of wherever you're going to. Now you might have a mile on each side or whatever that's extra, so you can put in an extra 2 mile difference or whatever you want to do there. Because obviously they might not necessarily be traveling to the middle, they might be traveling to the furthest end of it. So you win some, you lose some, but put in the mile if you want to put in a difference there. Lastly, your price per mile. Whatever you charge your client per mile, you can put the price in there. And then what it does is it looks at where you're going to, it looks where you're starting from, it gets the distance as the crow flies. It adds on the extra miles because it might need to go beyond the middle of that particular location, and it multiplies out the percentage. So you get the percentage and it multiplies that out. That's essentially how it works. So you can play around with these figures, put in 2 postcodes that you know the distance, and just play around and see what you need to do to get that correct. Obviously, they're not all going to be an exact science, but I mean, even if it's a mile or 2 out, at the end of the day, it's not the end of the world. Notes to appear on the quotes. We'll see when we get to the quote in a minute. There's a few lines worth of notes. You can put whatever notes you want to in here. Put your business address in here. That is just something that will show on the quote. Do you charge VAT? Yes or no? I'll put in yes for now, but if you put in no, that's fine. You don't have to put that flat rate in if you put in the VAT rate. If you put in no, if you put in yes, obviously make sure that there's a rate in there. If there is a rate in there and you select no, that's fine. It's not going to do anything. It's not going to show it at all, so that's all right. And lastly, but not least, put in the sources where you get work. You can type in up to 10, whatever you want here, LinkedIn, Facebook, networking, marketing, whatever you want to put in here. And then what it'll do is when you do the quotes, it'll ask you where that work came from, and you're able to select up to 4 per job of what you've actually listed in this list. So list 10 sources of work that may be relevant to you. So if you want to keep track of where your quotes are coming from. And I think that's all that there is on this intro and setup list. If you haven't understood anything that I've mentioned so far, it may make more sense as we go through the rest of the spreadsheet in more detail. So just bear that in mind. Let's have a look at the rest. Quote list. Very, very simple. Each time you want to add a new quote, simply come on, add the number. Put in the start, the date, doing a quote the 1st of August. If this expiry / accepted date, if you leave it blank, it's basically just going to say that the quote is it doesn't expire. You can put the quote, the quote's fine, it'll just keep going. It'll keep on as active until you come and change it. If you put in an expiry date, so if I say this actually expires on the 30th of August, it's not going to work. 30th of August, oh, what's going on? There we go, 30th of August. Expiry date, you can put the client name. Test client 14. Location of you starting. If you want to use the BR3, which is your default location that we put in at the beginning, leave it blank. If by some slim chance, maybe this is another staff member who's doing this, maybe she leaves from somewhere else, you can put in a new starting code. If you put in a code that doesn't exist, AB1 does exist. ZZ1. . . . 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1. 1 If the person is leaving from somewhere else, and you put in, for example, BR1, it's going to ask you for this location over here. If you put in the location there, CRO, it will go fine, it's got the location. If you come and put a location that doesn't exist, that goes yellow. So if you just put in, this is where it made me a little tricky, if you just put in ZZ1, the other one goes yellow, it goes fill in CR, because it wants to know where you're going to, and then once you fill in where you're going to, it says no, it doesn't actually recognize the first location. So because it doesn't recognize the first location, you've got to try something else. BR1, there we go, BR1 and CR0. So they're not leaving from BR3, they're leaving from BR1, they're going to CR0, and you can then select quote. Once you've done that, it works out the quote. Now it's already got a price in there, but all that price is so far is for where you're traveling to. Then as you come and select products, so I go, yeah, I want to test product 2, get 2 of those, and we want test product 1, there are 4 of those, and I want to give the person, there are no extra items, but you want to give them a discount. You see it goes yellow because it says you've said discount, but you haven't filled in an amount, so you fill in an amount. And each time if there's any yellow cells, i.e. something that's missing, or if there are red cells, something that's wrong, it won't show the price. Only when everything that's put in, it understands it's correct, it'll then show the price. So if you just go along and make sure that you've got all the items listed that you wanted to list, and you've got the discounts and everything that you wanted to list, as long as the price shows, it means the spreadsheet understands everything. And then lastly, you can just come here and say, I've got that job from LinkedIn, whatever the case might be. In the extras, you can type whatever you want. It'll just show us one line on the quote and the price, and you can type in whatever you want to the discount and the price. If there is no discount, just leave it blank. If there are no extra items, just leave that blank. These are kind of extra things just in case there's something you want to charge for that you don't actually have a price on the price list for, something bespoke, that kind of thing. And then lastly, as I said, you can select your source, your quote. You can select up to 4 different ways that particular job has come in, where it's come from. If you select website, the whole amount will go towards website. In this case, where I've selected LinkedIn, Facebook, and LinkedIn, the reason why I've selected LinkedIn twice is because then 50%, this will break into 3, so it'll each be 33 and a third. So 66.6% of the value will go to LinkedIn, and 33 and a third will go to Facebook. So you can divide it up to 4 different things. If it's mainly from LinkedIn, you can select 2 LinkedIns, 1 Facebook, 3 LinkedIns, 1 Facebook, or whatever. So, I mean, you can put as much detail in here as you want to. It depends how pedantic you want to get. But for argument's sake, if you put in another LinkedIn here, then what it do is it'll break it into quarters. 3 quarters of the price would go to LinkedIn, 1 quarter would go to Facebook. If you only put 1, then 100% goes to that particular source. And that's it. You can literally just type each line in as you go along, and then what it does is it calculates. So these quotes are still valid because you haven't reached the expiry date. This one's gone beyond the expiry date, so it says it's still a quote, but it's expired because you haven't come back and accepted. These ones have been accepted. So if you reissue the quotes, just come in and change the expiry date. If you give them an extension, if it's accepted, come and click the accept. If it's not accepted, just leave it, because then the quote will eventually become expired when it goes past the expiry date. If it is accepted, fill in the date here when it was actually accepted. So this is the expiry date or the accepted date. So if it is accepted, just replace the expiry date with the date was actually accepted, because then the spreadsheet will take that into consideration when doing your reports. So this is the page where everything happens. This is the page where you enter each quote 1 line at a time. Your price list, as we discussed, because I've selected the option to only have 1 price list, this is it. I can just list my products. I can list up to 1,000 of them, list the products or services, don't do any duplicates, and the price simply per line. It's as simple as that. Put the price. If it's excluding VAT, if I put in that I'm VAT registered. And that's it. Anything you put in here will be available on your quote list, and these prices that it's looking up, it'll look up from these price lists. So if I came here, that was 225 for test product number 1. It says £225. If I come to the price list and go product number 1 is actually now changed to 35. You come back here to 75. You see the price is actually adjusted accordingly. So as soon as you update in your price list, it'll update. What else? So that's your price list, you've got your quote list. Your quote template, this is very, very simple. It just lays out that information that you've got on your quote list in a way that can be saved as a PDF and sent to the client. So all you do here is simply come and select the quote number, and it'll change, and it'll show the information for that particular client. It'll list the items that you said with the mileage, discount, everything that you stated with the VAT. It'll give you the location, quote date, quote number, and it'll give you those notes that you put in. You can see this quote is valid until, and it gives you a valid date as well according to the spreadsheet. You can put your logo in here. So if you say show the block, it says yes. If you go to insert and an image and a picture, you can insert your logo, resize it, put your logo in here. Once your logo, this block here is only really just there to help you send your logo. Once it's centered, you can come here and say, no, don't show the block, and it disappears. You'll have your logo in over here. So that is a useful document. If you go to File, save a copy, and go to Save As, File, save a copy, but then change the Excel workbook there to PDF, and save a PDF. You can save a PDF copy of this particular quote. It should only save up to the gray. You can go to view page break, and you can see where your page break is and drag the borders if you want back to normal. So essentially then you can just select each quote, save as a PDF, send that PDF to the client, job done. Obviously this may not serve as the entire quote. You might have other pages to go with it with terms and conditions and all sorts of other things. If you do, just use the notes on the intro and setup just to make reference to the other documents attached. But you can send this along with your other documents as a PDF. And it's got all the information, the specifics about the quote, just in case you've forgotten any line, products, or anything like that. The report, this again is calculated based on all the data you entered. So it shows you what percentage per month has been accepted, active, and expired. Not percentage, what value per month has been accepted, active, and expired. These are the months based on the quoting, the quote date. Here you've got a breakdown of each of the different categories. Here you can see how many quotes you've done, what percentage has been accepted, what percentage is still active and accepted. So here, for example, 28.57% has been accepted, 92.86% is either active or has been accepted. So you can see what potentially could still come in. So in other words, everything that hasn't expired. Your value per status per month, you can see where all the different statuses for which source they've come from. You can also come down here and see the accepted values per source, so you can see what's been accepted. It will show you from the archive or from the quote list. I'll get to the archive in a minute. And here you can see, this shows you the entire amount quoted for each particular month. This one here shows you items that have been accepted based on when they were quoted. So this one essentially shows you items, so you can see out of all of your accepted jobs, which one, when they were there quoted. So the difference between here and here would be jobs that you quoted that month that haven't been accepted. That would be this bit up here at the top that you're missing. So these are all jobs quoted that month. So you can see which months you may have quoted a lot of jobs or a high volume, at least from a point of view of the price of the jobs. These are when you quoted your accepted jobs, and these are when the jobs were actually accepted. So you can see here, although you quoted them there, that they all came in this month. So April's when they came in, for March you would have quoted them. So the red ones are when you quoted your successful jobs, your grey ones are when you quoted all the jobs, and the green ones were when your successful jobs actually came in. So that's a fairly useful graph to have. In fact, here you can actually see exactly what they are. All accepted quotes based on quoted month, all accepted quotes based on the accepted month, and then all quotes, regardless of whether they were accepted or not. So those are some useful graphs on the report. As I said, everything updates automatically. The only thing you can change here is this one here, this cell at the top where it says override. If by default, this will give you, if you take that out, it'll give you the current month. So I'm shooting this video in January 2020. So this will give you the current month that you're currently in as your final month. So it'll show your previous 12 months. If you override it by putting in any date of the month you want to be last, if I put July 2020, it will put July 2020. So it'll give me a 12-month period based on July 2020. So I've put in some futuristic figures here just to show you how the spreadsheet works. So you can override the month, the last month on the graphs by just putting in any date in that month over here. I'll come back to new locations. Archive is exactly the same as your quote list. It's just not doing a lot of the formulas. So if you start building up a lot of quotes here that are just sitting and you want to move them, include the price column, scroll across to end of source 4, right click, copy, come to your archive, right click, paste values. It doesn't change color or anything, it literally just stays like that. There's very few formulas working on this page. It's just to archive your data. When you come back here, you can reselect, not including the price this time, but from here across, and then say right click, say clear contents. Now when you clear the contents, it'll leave a great big gap here. You can just come here and go sort smallest to largest again and resort your invoices, and then you would have gotten rid of the ones that you've moved across to your archive. And if you go back to your report, you'll see that certain things like this one will change because there's now data in the archive as well. So it will show you a breakdown between the archived and the current list. So essentially, these are just your live quotes. Once they've you're going to from time to time want to move them because you've only got 1,000 lines on here. You've got 5,000 in the archive. You can then move them across here, resort once you're done. Whereas this one, this whole section is unlocked. So it's not doing any calculations and things as far as the price is concerned. Whereas this one, it's just unlocked from here. So make sure you copy that and paste it across. But when you're clearing contents here, just start with under the red headers. And last but not least, the new locations. If you put in a postcode, remember I spoke to you about these postcodes here, whether it be postcodes where you're starting from or where you're going to. If any of them go yellow and it says, actually, I don't understand that postcode, you can either select another postcode, or if you want to add that location on, simply come to new locations, put in the postcode. So if you want to add in ZZ1, it says here, what's the latitude, what's the longitude. Make sure that they're between these, because those are all the longitude and latitude for the UK. So if we say latitude 50.0 and longitude -4, for example, it'll then know where that is on the map. And then when you come to your quote, you can add ZZ1 and it'll know where it is. So you can put in new postcodes if you want to, add longitude and latitude, and it will work as per the other ones. So you can add new locations. So yeah, just a very quick recap. Archive list for any of the old quotes, whether they've been accepted or not, you can move them across here. New locations, if you need to add new postcodes. Report automatically generated. You can decide what the last date is. Quote template, simple to use. Just simply select the quote number you want to see from the list and it will populate accordingly. Price lists, if you're using all 10, make sure you've got the data in. If you're using the first one, just enter product, services, and price. Quote list, this is where it all happens. Make sure you fill in as many of the columns as possible, especially the prices as required, but as many of these as possible, leaving only the location blank if it is in fact the default where you're starting. And the intro and setup, you can play around with these as you go along. They'll update automatically. You can play around with all of these if you want to. Just make sure you select this at the beginning. If I come here and say, no, I'm not that registered, and we now go to the quote template, you can see it just puts the quote total. It says we do not charge VAT. So it's the same thing, it just doesn't put the VAT and stuff down here. So I think that's all that you need to know. If this works for you, I wish you all the best. If this doesn't work for you, but you want a quote calculator, it's one of the most common spreadsheets we do as far as bespoke spreadsheets, because obviously everyone's different. You've all got a different way of charging. So we are quite happy to listen to what you need and make your bespoke option when it comes to price lists. So please do get in touch. But if this one does work for you and you want to use this instead of a bespoke version, just before we end this video, I just want to show you one more thing. If you go to the archive list, I've removed those items are archived, but if you as we said, copy it from this list, paste values into the archive. The prices won't update here. So if you update the price lists, they won't update in the archive because you simply copied the text across. The price here is a simply copied text. It will not update. Any prices on here will update if you update the price list. So if you are going to update the prices, if you have a major price list update, you want to update everything, I'll suggest actually taking the archiving all those quotes back onto the archive list. If you don't want the price to update, archive them. Once they're archived, they won't update. If you then want to make, if you've archived something, say here for example, and the client accepts it, and you want to bring it back into the quoted, you can either just change the status on the archive. It'll say quote accepted. If it says quote, you can just change it to accepted if it has been archived. Otherwise, if you want to bring it back here, it's very simple. Simply copy it here, paste values back onto the quoted list, onto the price list, and when you paste values back in here, don't obviously do the price, just do from here, quote number along, price will recalculate, and then it's back live again. So you just copy it back the same way, copy and paste values. Yeah, just make sure then you just come remove it from the archive list. I think that's all. So yeah, bear in mind anything on this quote list will update, the price will update if you update the price list, and it's all live, it's been monitored. If you move it across, it's simply just text, nothing will update except for what you need on the reports. If you copy it, copy and paste values back into the quote list, you can then make it live again. I think that's all. We wish you all the best of your quoting. Thank you and goodbye.